because the conditions that exist today were the same conditions that existed before the white man came to Africa. The loss of Nelson Mandela is Allah's decision. All we need to do is live his legacy, live by the values and the ideas that he stood for, and pray for him. It's a great loss to Africa, but you know, Allah decides and nobody can do anything about it. From a personal perspective, I think he suffered long enough, and it is better for him to rest than just stay. He's not alive, he's not dead, and suffering. I think this is better for him and his family, who have gone through a lot of agony, and may his soul rest in peace. I don't know what was the second part of your question.
Your thought on the whole summit in France.
Well, my thought about the summit is just, it is another summit, and we do hope that it will be followed up by concrete action. Well, it's another summit, that's all I can tell you, and we wait and see what is going to happen. But of course, we give them a peace of mind, because when you look at the press, Western press, no press is more hostile to Africans, and they are fond of calling African leaders dictators than the French press. And so the entire Western press is racist. Dictators are only found in Africa. Thieves are only found in Africa. And so, as I said in my statement, if Yahya Jammeh were to spend $1 million for maybe my birthday, oh, it's massive corruption. People are some people do not have something to eat, and then he's spending that amount of money. Somewhere else they spend $4 billion or pounds on an anniversary, and that's it. A Western leader steals $10 billion. It's a financial scandal. We have seen what happened in Iraq. We have seen what has happened elsewhere. Certain arms deals that where billions were lost, and those are just financial scandals. But in Africa, dictators and corrupt leaders can only exist in Africa, and this is unacceptable, and I made it very clear to the French president that the stereotyping of Africans is unacceptable. We are not going to accept it. This should be respected. After all, the wealth of the West was looted from Africa. If they cannot at least say thank you, they better shut up than accuse us of corruption. After all, what is corruption in your local language? They brought corruption to Africa, and today, after robbing us, they say they pretend to love Africans, right? But Africans find it, even government officials find it difficult to even obtain a visa to go there. Government officials have to be fingerprinted as if we are criminals. And then they stand and say, oh, we care about Africa. When anybody who talks about immigration, first of all, is talking about Africans. It's not any other person. Other races find it much easier to enter their countries than African blacks. And so it is also a question of we blacks, and especially as African leaders, to wake up and stand up for them. And that is my message. Unfortunately, some of us are just praising him, and I have nothing against him. I have nothing against anybody. But I believe in one thing, that if you are not going to be sincere about anything, don't talk about it. If you are not convinced about what you are saying, don't pretend that you love Africans, and when all what you read for Africa is just havoc and then racism. This is the point. Remember that when we talk about international law or international institutions, you can imagine all African heads of state, including myself, signing a letter to the UN Security Council telling them that the case of Kenya should be deferred for 1 year or at least 1.5 years. Guess what we got as a response? No. And who are those who said no? Those who are talking loud about human rights and the ICC are not even signatories to the ICC Charter. So, why would you set up an institute? Why can an institution be set up only to be hijacked by those who do not subscribe to that institution and want to use it against Africa? But you know, before we signed off that letter, I told them, unless we send them a clear message, they are going to take us for a ride. Nobody listens to me. Oh, we don't want a confrontation. I would rather have a confrontation than be insulted. After all, we are not a minority in this world. When you look at the white race, one thing the world doesn't know is that they are the smallest minority in terms of race. You look at China as a race, Chinese, they are 10 times larger than the European race. So put Africa and others. How come this small minority have been leading this world for the past 500, 600, 700 years? This is unacceptable. It's not acceptable. It is not even democratic that a minority rules over the majority for 700 years. So Africans, we should respect ourselves. Because when we look at, if you put Nigeria and Sudan together, or Mali and Sudan together in terms of landmass, it's 10 times bigger than the continent of Europe. And up to today, we are bound down to Europe. This is unacceptable. I'm not a racist, but I will not accept nonsense from anybody. Gambia can be small, but we are not small people. We are all human beings, irrespective of the size of the country or the economic situation of the country. But look at it. Did you ever wonder why they are a minority? You take the Indian population added to the Chinese population, they are 100 times or 1,000 times larger than the entire white race in this world. And then they have been ruling for a very long time. Time has come for real democracies to exist. At least let each continent rule itself. Let each race rule itself. Let each race keep to their natural resources. You know, but it's of course also we, the Africans. They use some of you to castigate African government because you want a visa to go there. And they go there and say, you what? When you are old, you end up being homeless. Now, coming back to poverty. There isn't a single country in this whole world where we don't have poor people. But thanks to God, in the Gambia, we are classified as the poorest. But my people don't sleep outside, and my people they are not homeless. Gambians are not homeless, even foreigners are not homeless. No person, except madmen, is from the garbage, from the trash bins. So poverty by whose standards? You cannot judge me by your standards. The climatic conditions are different. Where I came from, France, I dare not stand outside with old ladies talking to you. So the climatic conditions are different, so don't judge people by your standards. It is even undemocratic. So when they say, oh, massive poverty in the Gambia, and the Ajama is spending 1 million to celebrate his birthday, whose father's million is that? Now, if you care so much about the Gambian people, bring what you have taken from us, plus 25%, and see who's going to beg who. But at least in the Gambia, I have not seen a homeless Gambian, I have not seen a Gambian die of starvation, and I have not seen a sane Gambian eating from the trash bin. So poverty is by whose standards? So, but you, especially the younger generation of Africans, you have to be very careful. One thing, asylum doesn't mean that you should sell your country or destroy your country.
Your Excellency, security was high on the agenda here. The standby force is not a new idea, it's not a new concept, although France may be taking the credit for it now. But crucially, the funding mechanism and the necessary structures that are supposed to be in place are not. You don't discuss much about this.
Well, that's the point. When we talk about the standby force, I made it very clear that if you have to set up a standby force, that is going to be financed by the West. It will never take. After all, you need special funding for your standby force, because every member of the AU that has an army, you take part of that army who are already armed to be part of the standby force. So now, things change when they depended entirely on G8 and other Western countries to finance and equip the standby force. Nobody is going to do that. And that's why it has been 7 years today. The standby force has never been met. We have chiefs of defense staff meeting all the time, even the West African standby force. If it was established, as I said, every country you have an army, these soldiers are paid. Why would we need somebody else to foot the bill? Why do we Africans always think that somebody has to foot our bill for our own interest? He who pays the piper calls the tune. And this is why most of us can never be independent. So this standby force, as long as we depend on other people, France may do it, yes. But I think it's going to take a long time because France alone cannot be able to finance that. They also have other problems. France has economic problems. But why should Africa depend on France